Hey there everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. Today I have two cards that I'm going to be sharing using some new Altenew products, and I'm also going to be talking about using embossing folders as a soft texture for a background with a main focal point. So I'm going to start off first by stamping onto some white cardstock using one of the new stamps. This one is Sentimental Florals. It's really pretty. It's got this gorgeous wreath image, and I'm going to use that as the main focal point for my card. The cardstock I'm stamping onto is Hammermill white cardstock. I really like this for Copic coloring. It's super smooth and it takes the blending really well. I'm stamping with Simon's Stamp Intense Black ink. It's perfect for Copic coloring. It dries really quickly and it doesn't bleed when you color over it. I'll stamp this using my Misty tool to get a really nice impression, and then I'm going to start selecting my colors. I'm going to color the leaves with two different greens. I have a light, like yellowish green, and then I have more of a traditional green. I'm going to only color pieces of this because I want to make sure that I can share everything in today's video, and so I'm only going to show sections of the coloring. You'll notice Oscar makes a couple of cameos in today's video. That was one of them there. He was throwing his tail into my camera just because, of course, he had to do it. Later on, I'll show you how he was hanging out with me as I was creating these cards. After I colored the leaves, I am bringing in some pinks to color in some of the flowers along with some blues. This color combination I really loved. I think this is a really classic color combo and it just worked really nicely. I colored all the flowers exactly the same, so when you're seeing me color these right now, this is the same thing that I did to the other side, which you can see is completed. So once I have the coloring completed for this image, I am going to go ahead and bring in the coordinating die and cut this out. So this cuts out as a wreath, so you're going to have the center portion cut out as well when you cut out the outer portion. And I really like that because then you can put a sentiment in the middle if you wanted to. I am going to layer mine on top of the wreath, but you do have that option if you wanted to do that. Okay, so I have an embossing folder here. This is from Simon's Stamp, and any of the products that I'm using today are linked below in the video description. I'm spritzing my white cardstock, which is 120-pound white cardstock from Simon, and I'm going to stick this inside of my embossing folder. So by spritzing it with a little bit of water, what we're doing is we're softening the paper and getting it primed so that way as we run this through our die cut machine to emboss the design, it's not going to crack. The paper itself is not going to crack because it's got that moisture to help it take the shape of the folder. So this is going to get put onto our A2 sized card, which I'm making from some Nina Desert Storm cardstock. This is going to look beautiful framing up those florals. I love the natural color of this paper. It works really well for floral cards. So the wreath is going to get popped up on top of our embossed background, which is adding texture behind this element. It's not going to distract from the element because it's white on white, so we have that nice subtle texture to provide some interest, but it's not going to distract from the beautiful coloring we did on top. So on top of the coloring, I'm going to add a sentiment. This is from the Sentimental Flowers stamp set. I'm stamping this with embossing ink onto some slate gray cardstock. My plan is to white heat emboss this greeting with some embossing powder. So I'll just sprinkle that on top and then I can heat set that. And once I have it set, I will cut it out with my fine tip scissors into a nice shape. You could of course also cut this down into a rectangle if you're not into fussy cutting. So I'm layering this on top of the floral wreath, pulling out a few gems. This is the Modern Spring Mix from Honeybee Stamps. Gorgeous colors that matched really well with the colors that I'm using. But if you're not using the exact same colors that I am for this card, you could mix up some different gems from another collection, or if you've got some gems that are part of a sequin mix, you could use sequins too. It's totally your preference. So use this card as a guide for making your rendition. Change it up however you feel. I like how this turned out. The colors of the gems really paired up nice with the colors of the card. And so that's card number one. Really simple. So now I'm going to pull in the Enjoy Life stamp set. This beautiful lily image is absolutely stunning. And I'm going to stamp this onto, again, Hammermill white cardstock with Intense Black ink, so that way I can Copic color this as well. I love lilies. I have a whole section of my garden that is just lilies. It actually borders my vegetable garden, and I absolutely love how they add so much color there. So I'm going to color the lily as a tiger stargazer kind of lily. And I really liked this color combination. It's really pretty. I focused the darkest coloring right in the center and then brought in a really dark RV marker to add some speckling. I really liked how that added some nice contrast to the lily. I'll color also the smaller petals in very much a similar fashion. Of course, trying to make sure I leave some light areas for the dimension and also the color of the lily to maintain that interest. Okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up the coloring. I'm just going to finish coloring in the leaves, which I used the same darker traditional green that I had used for the first card. I'm going to pull out the coordinating die and cut this out. I really like that it cuts out some of the inner portions between the petals and the leaves too, so you get to see a lot more of the background when you layer this on top of something. So my die cut is ready to be put on top of an embossed background. I'm going to pull out this vine folder from Simon Says Stamp. Stunningly gorgeous. And I'm going to use that same white cardstock technique. I misted the paper before putting it into my embossing folder, just like I did for the first card, so that way the paper is primed. And now we have this really nice, beautiful texture that's going to go behind our lily. So I'm going to pop this up with foam tape so it's just a little bit more dimensional on top of that folder. And you can see how that provides so much interest back there, but it does not distract from the beautiful coloring. So what I want to encourage you to do is to recreate this card or the first card using the techniques that I'm sharing here, but you could change out the stamps and the folders for whatever you have in your stash. Again, these new stamps are from Altenew and the folders are from Simon, but you could swap these out for whatever you already have. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my greeting here. This is from the Sentimental Floral stamp set, the first stamp set we used, and I just like the greetings in that, so I'm going to stamp this onto some slate gray cardstock. Okay, so I told you Oscar was hanging around with me today as I was creating these cards. And I know you only get to see typically his tail or his toes, but I thought I'd flip the camera up so you could see him. He's sitting here on my desk. Typically, he's watching out the window, which is to the right, looking out at the bird feeders because, of course, cats and birds always make a good pair. Now, who you don't see often is Maddie. She made a quick little peek around the side of the desk. She's a little bit more shy, so she doesn't get on camera very often, but she was hanging out with me too. I have 4 cats, so they always are typically somewhere nearby and always are curious about what I'm doing. Okay, so now we're going to finish up this sentiment. Again, like I did for the first one, I stamped it and embossed it, then fussy cut it out. Again, you don't have to fussy cut. You could just cut that into a simple rectangle. I like to make things more complicated and fussy cut because that's just me. I'll pop that sentiment up on top of my card and then wrap things up by adding some blue teardrop gems that I have in my stash. If you can't find anything like this, any blue sequin would look really pretty. I liked the combination of blue and orange together, and the teardrops just look really cool. My last thought was to add a bit of sparkle to the center of the lilies. So I pulled in some Stickles, and I'm just kind of dabbing them in the center portion of the lilies. I think it looks really pretty, and even though it's very small, subtle detail, it catches the light, and so I think that really adds just a nice finishing touch. Goes well with the teardrops, and I just liked how it turned out. All right, so there you have it. 2 different cards that I made with these beautiful floral stamps and also featuring that embossed background behind each one. That makes a huge difference. You could, of course, have left the backgrounds completely plain white or have done maybe some stenciling back there, but I love the dimension of the embossing folders. Those add so much texture back there. It really elevates the look of the card. So I hope you were inspired by today's video. I hope you got some ideas for creating some cards with things you already have or maybe with these new products. Be sure to check everything out. I have links below in the video description or over on my blog. Thank you again for tuning in and watching. I hope you'll give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I will be back very soon with more to share with you all, but until then, I hope everyone has a fabulous day. Bye!